hurdles which they face throughout their journey and life at the various camps. She stabilizes and unifies her family. The choice of being the facilitator makes Marjode a strong character. She is the symbol of hope and the driving force of their life, although nothing positive happens to them. In the novel, Rose of Sharon is the incarnation of hope and the survival for the future as she selflessly breastfeeds a starving man after she delivers a stillborn child. In such bleak circumstances, it is the small acts of kindness which offer comfort and keep the lamp of hope burning. Resilience is the need of the hour during the pandemic. The effervescent people do not slosh on disappointments in life. They would rather concede to the circumstances in which they are pushed to and grow from the errors which they have committed. There is no immediate relief for the present pandemic till the arrival of the vaccine. In the meantime, it is a struggle for survival and adapting to change. The pandemic has provided the people with the chance to re-evaluate their priorities. Rose of Sharon accepts Marjode's request at the end of the novel is powerful. The ability to retain hope amidst the darkness phase of one's life, and in fact of the whole humanity, is a lesson.
Kindly wrap up in 1
learned
minute.
by all. Yes. Coping with the changes and adapting to the new normal, where everything is either virtual or distant, is part and parcel of the life in times of pandemic. I would like to conclude by saying that fear and anxiety are the prime agents of depression, and the virus of negativity could kill a lot more than the actual virus. Therefore, broadening the limited vision of one's own pain and suffering would entail viewing life in its whole dimension and observe that whole humanity is interconnected, and what affects one naturally would affect others. Change in perception and transformation in value systems could be a step in the direction of building bridges torn apart by selfishness led by pain and suffering. We hope that the end of this ordeal would lead us all to a dawn of a new humane civilization. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. So Dr. Seema has brought out with taking the help of the Steinbeck's novel that how pandemic, epidemic, or the natural calamities, they are causing
Shanthi,
unspoken human miseries and all different kinds of anguish. But she ended up with a hope. And with this hope, we are moving to the next paper, which is by A.S. Geetha and Smrutisikta Mishra. It is on the queer identities and conflicts in family relationship. So, S. Geetha?
Yes, good evening, ma'am. Am I audible?
Please, yes, please, you're audible. Please carry on.
Okay, good evening, everybody.
The title. Do you have anything to share?
No, ma'am, I'm going to read out from my paper.
Sure, okay, carry on.
Just sorry to interrupt. As per the rule, you need to put your video on. That is mandatory.
Video is capturing me, ma'am. I'm in before a laptop, only video is on. Am I not visible?
Sudeshna, madam, can you see? I cannot see it.
No, I
can see it.
Okay, you can start.
It is being captured, ma'am. I'm before a laptop, only video is on. Am I not visible, ma'am?
No, you are not visible.
Please start.
Okay. I'll start off. The title of my paper is Queer Identities and Conflicts in Family Relationships, a depiction and analysis of a few Indian films. Queer figures have crowded the world cinema, and of late Indian cinema is joining the race for proving its contribution by narrating the global hackneyed characters such as the sexually vulnerable other, the outcast, coward case, the transgender exile, the revealed woman, and the bisexual refugee. Indian society is a heterosexual one, and contradictory sexual identities do not gain social approbation. This rigidity makes people with alternative sexuality not only to struggle for their rightful place in society, but also yearn for acceptance within their families. The affirmation of one's sexual identity going against the family values is always pigeonholed as Western. This paper attempts to shed light on how queer identities create conflicts in family relationships by taking up 3 movies for analysis. In Fire, the repressed feelings of 2 married women come to the fore in the form of their physical relationship. Shonali Bose's Margarita with a Straw narrates a tale of a cerebral palsy afflicted woman who discovers her sexual identity and in the process becoming a woman of her own. Sridhar Rangayan's Evening Shadows highlights the tribulations faced by a mother in South India who is trapped between conservative cultural dogmas on the one hand and a son's queer identity on the other hand. This movie showcases the conflicts in the perception of sexual identities of 2 different generations. The 3 chosen movies share a common thread of having homosexual protagonists who lead closeted lives and how the alternative sexuality, dense relationships. So this paper seeks to discuss how assertion of queer identities leads to strains in family ties. I'll start off by saying how Indian society is a bisexual one wherein there are only two genders, male and female, and any other gender is never even thought of, leave alone recognizing. And sexuality is still considered to be a taboo in South Asia, and a strong attachment of morality makes it almost impossible to discuss issues on sexuality explicitly at home or with family members. Unlike Western countries where there is no strong bonding, family bonding, South Asian culture lays emphasis on the need to bond with family and fosters strong relationships. What makes the upbringing of children in South Asia different from that of West is the role played by family in inculcating strong social values. A liberal approach coupled with individual freedom on sexuality makes Western culture completely different from South Asian culture, which is bound by tradition and cultural ethos. And LGBT identity is thus seen as a direct assault on traditional family setup and conservative family values. Now coming to studies on the impact of queer identities on familial relations, any act of explicitly proclaiming one's sexual identity which is not in consonance with the established ones is always met with stiff resistance in the family. Hence, people with contrary sexual identities face outright rejection and discrimination at the hands of their kith and kin. Now taking up the analysis of three movies, Fire, Margitra with a Straw and Evening Shadows. The three movies taken up for analysis depict the family backlash that ensues as a result of the protagonist's alternative sexuality. Fire narrates a coming together of Sita and Radha, whose unhappy and oppressive marriages lead to the physical relationship. Margitra with a Straw explores how a cerebral palsy afflicted woman's sexual orientation tears apart her relationship with her mother and weakens a bond between them. Evening Shadows showcases a conflict that a woman is subjected to over her son's gay identity. Her relationship with the son goes for a toss upon learning the hidden secret and widens a rift between them. The three movies thus depict the impact of contrary sexual identities on family relationships. Deepa Mehta's Fire portrays the lives of Radha and Sita, who are oppressed in their marriages and turn to each other for comfort. The indifference and neglect of their respective spouses make them to come closer and give vent to their pent-up feelings of dejection and frustration. In one of her interviews, Deepa Mehta says, India is not a monolithic society. Fire is about choices, the choices we make in life which may lead to alienation. By bisexuality theme in the film, I have just shown an extreme choice. She also adds, I wanted to make a film about a middle-class household where two female protagonists fall in love and to examine the outcome of the choices they make, especially its impact on the family, society, and themselves. The house, where heterosexuality and patriarchy ruled the roost, is the first barrier for queers to reassert their sexual identities. It's a lack of acceptance and ostracization that push queers outside the purview of family and family relationships. Moving on to Shonali Bose's Margitra with a Straw, the movie narrates the story of a cerebral palsy affected woman who journeys from India to New York to discover her sexual identity and becoming a woman of her own. The protagonist, Laila Kapoor, a student of Delhi University, develops an interest towards Neema, a lead singer of the musical band of the university, but feels rejected when he spurns her. Along with her mother, Laila goes to Manhattan to pursue her higher studies. She meets a young man named Jared, to whom she is immediately drawn to. Laila also comes across a Pakistani-Bangladesh visually impaired girl, Kanam, and is taken in by her fierce personality. Soon she becomes confounded over her sexual identity, being attracted to a man at the same time having a relationship with a woman. According to the director Shonali Bose, our society feels that people who are wheelchair bound are different, but they too have sexual urges, they too have their desires, and they too seek love. It's not a preachy movie, but about a horny teenager who has his sexual preferences. Moving on to the last movie which I've taken for analysis, Sridhar Rangayan's Evening Shadows. Set in Mumbai and in a small Indian town in Karnataka, the movie begins with the arrival of Karthik, the protagonist, for a puja. His conservative parents have found a match for him, but Karthik has something else in store for them. As his father, Damodar, is a strict person, he turns to his mother, Vasudha, to disclose his sexual identity. When he comes out to her about being a gay, she is shell-shocked and feels that it would have been better had she'd not known the truth. As a woman caught in a tradition-bound society, Vasudha has to deal with the challenges arising out of her son's gay identity and a difficulty in accepting the hard reality. The movie thus narrates the travails of a gay who longs for familial acceptance and his dilemma in choosing between his individual identity and deep-rooted cultural traditions. In an interview, the film's director said, over the last few years, we have been focusing more on the LGBT community and the parents have been literally left behind. The idea is to say that when you come out of the closet, you push a parent into a closet because you give out your secret to them and they do not know what to do with it. The film is about how the parent understands the son. Many parents from small towns do not have resources or wherewithal or support to understand this. For them, it becomes like a sudden bombshell when their children come out. The film is not about the son coming out, but the mother coming out of the woman and standing up for herself and her son. Let me conclude by saying the three movies what I've chosen for analysis depict how family relationships come under strain because of the alternate sexuality of the protagonist. In Deepa Mehta's Fire, Satan rather unfetter themselves in the domestic oppression and walk out of their spouses to be together. The relationship between Laila and her mother Shubhangi in Margaret of the Straw goes for a toss when Laila discloses her sexual orientation to her mother. The mother-daughter patch up only before the death of her mother. In Evening Shadows, the dark secret of Karthik's gay identity rips up sexuality in the open. Society's rigid norms dictate individuals to conform to the established order in sexuality, and any act contrary to it is met with a strong disapprobation. Alternative sexuality is seen an open threat to the family that accepts only heterosexual relationships. It is indeed a lack of open discussion between parents and children that creates barriers between them and disrupts relationships. Hence, it is imperative that cures develop robust family bonds that will bolster the family ties and pave the way for an inclusive society. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Geetha. So we get to know through analysis of these three movies, mostly about the preference of the sexualities. But we would like to, in the question answer session, we would like to listen to you from the reaction of the family when the child come out to be a trans identity. So thank you. We would like to listen to you later on also. So now we move on to the next paper, that is Catharsis through Realism. This is the paper by Professor Philipp Sulim.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am.
Please, kindly.
Good evening, dear panelists, attendees. Thank you, Geetha, for this opportunity to present the paper. I am Professor Philipp Sulim from Christ Deemed to be University, Bangalore, working at Theater Studies Department. I would like to share a screen as a PowerPoint presentation, but it's disabled. So how can I share it? Am I audible?
Yes, you are very much audible.
So how can I share PowerPoint presentation? Because when I click share screen, it's host disabled participant screen sharing.
Yeah, 1 minute.
Mm-hmm.
So have you shared your presentation? Seema, what can be done?
I think, ma'am, here towards the down, you have 5 options here. First is participants, after that Q&A, after that chat.
No, but if host is disabled, he will not be able to. Admin, can you please look into it so that Professor Sulim will be able to show his presentation?
I think then we have to contact to the tech. If he wants to present the paper, then maybe we can take him. This is the only option we have now.
Sir, can you please continue without it? Will it be difficult?
It won't be difficult, but it would be much better if I can present. So if it's...
can you give us some few minutes? In a sense, we start with the next presentation and we just contact the technical team in between so that sure, your presentation can go on. So I just, please don't mind, I just take you in the next turn. I mean, in a sense, I start with the next paper and meanwhile we'll solve this problem.
Yeah, sure. I can go next after it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I call upon Neha Mishra and Aninda Mishra on need for creating a socially sustainable society amid the COVID pandemic, a Gandhian perspective.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes, you are. Please carry on.
Okay, so thank you, ma'am, for giving me the opportunity to present paper in this conference. At the same time, I would also like to thank the organizers of the conference for considering my request for arranging an alternative slot for me to make presentation. So the title of my presentation is Towards Creating a Socially Sustainable Society Amid COVID-19 Pandemic, a Gandhian Perspective. So my paper basically deals with focusing on the social aspect of sustainability during the pandemic through Gandhian perspective. It basically analyzes social sustainability in terms of social equity, well-being, participation, and social justice. So it makes my paper points that the Gandhian idea of Sarvodaya is significance as it deals with the social welfare, and that holds importance in current pandemic times too. Apart from that, Gandhi also focused and developed an integrated view of the individual, society, and state by focusing on social harmony that is based upon the moral principles love, truth, justice, and nonviolence. So I would like to start my paper by stating the statement of the Secretary General of United Nations, who states that the COVID-19 pandemic is a public health emergency, but it is a far more. It is an economic crisis, a social crisis, and a human crisis that is fast becoming a human rights crisis. So, undoubtedly, the pandemic has emerged as a threat to humanity. It has affected society and economy like never before. It has led to the uncertainty and chaos. Individuals are suffering from isolation, anger, anxiety, hopelessness, and social and economic stress. So, amid COVID 19, the central focus has been on spreading awareness, prevention, and testing for the disease. But the pandemic has also unleashed various social problems that are somewhere underlooked. So, the fact that critical point that I would like to make here is that although the world is on the same platform in facing threats, however, some people are more at risk. For example, the pandemic has affected everyone, but its impacts on the vulnerable sections like women, migrant workers, children, and the elderly has been immense. So, thus, in COVID times, creating social sustainability in society becomes more critical and indispensable. So, what social sustainability is basically? It is a process for creating successful places that promotes well-being of people through understanding their needs and wants. So in current times, we can see how people needs and wants mainly sounds around protecting themselves from getting infected from the virus, as well as sustaining the crisis time economically, socially, and psychologically too. And also social sustainability as a concept is significant as it places people at the center of sustainability debates that reflects a deeper relationship between people, planet, and economy. Further, the importance of social sustainability arises from the fact that the pandemic has affected the society at the core. Now, coming to the indicator of social well-being and how it has been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, and discussing then what Gandhi has to talk on it. So, coronavirus pandemic has affected the economic, social, and economic and psychological well-being due to prolonged lockdown and restrictions on mobility. While many lost their livelihood, others gone through anxiety, stress, and depression. There is a risk of infection, the risk of getting hospitalized, the treatment cost, and of course, the risk of dying. So Gandhi makes the point that I would like to quote Gandhi here. He says that I do not believe in the doctrine of the greatest good of the greatest number. The only dignified human doctrine is the greatest good of all. So the Gandhi outlook on social well-being was different from that of Western perspective. For him, happiness lies in the happiness of society, where he focused more on greatest good of all, which makes a significant goal of social welfare for him. Thus, the word Sarvodaya, which is made up of two words, that is Sarva and Udaya, which means progress of all. So, Sarvodaya means basically the social upliftment and economic emancipation, and that is what we need in today's pandemic times too. Now, further, Gandhi also believed that the well-being of all, irrespective of whether one is rich or poor, the welfare of other was a crucial part of Gandhi's movement of Sarvodaya. It was also related to the concept of universal and universal service, which Gandhi termed as was Vasudev Kutumbakam and Swadesh Prabhundrayam. Now talking of social equity, so Gandhi emphasized that the majorities should take inspire and motivate the minorities. As for him, adjustments would be done when people who are more powerful take initiative rather than the other way around. So in this context, in COVID-19 times, it is a responsibility of the so-called better of people to help and assist the vulnerable section of the society in pandemic period. uh, Gandhi also spoke of not Gandhi spoke of equality not on general terms, but rather he primarily dealt with two aspects, that is, equality of status and equality of opportunity. He says that while we are born equal, meaning that we have right of equal opportunity, but not every individual has the same capacity. So Gandhi emphasized that all of us has to make certain efforts to do so. Yeah, for example, he says that economic equality can be achieved through equal distribution. In present context, one can see like not everyone in the society have the ability to deal with the virus. However, poor people cannot respond the same way like the white collar does. So viruses actually they accentuate the inequality in society. Thus, in this context, it becomes imperative that the government and the public health interventions has to follow the principle of equality. There has to be special safeguards for the vulnerable so that they can sustain and survive in the COVID-19 periods. So, nevertheless, more important is to understand that here maintaining physical distancing is also not possible for all. In fact, it's a privilege and a luxury and not everyone is able to do so. For example, vulnerable population like domestic workers, poor people, migrants, and dwellers cannot afford to do physical distancing. And when the world is grappled with the pandemic, it has reinforced the relevance of Gandhi in contemporary times. And Gandhi viewed that progress of a society should be determined by the state of the most vulnerable and the weakest one. And Gandhi raised the voice for the vulnerable and the weakest society, who comprised of people dealing not only with low income but also with other issues like social stigma, gender disparity, and locational disadvantages. Similarly, amid the pandemic, many are also suffering from poverty. It reminds of the Gandhi powerful statement, poverty, where he says that poverty is the worst form of violence. Similarly, COVID-19 has brought need to bring the transformative changes that includes the changes that need to be brought in the way we live, the way we produce, and the way we consume. So here, Gandhi himself was not less an epitome of sustainable production and consumption. Now, talking of gender equality, Gandhi emphasized that with regard to gender, he says that we should not say that women are in fact inferior to man. It would be rather a sin to say so. He strongly advocated for their education and social positioning. The third aspect of social sustainability that I have discussed in my paper is that of participation. So, talking from Gandhi's perspective, Gandhi ensure the participation from all sections of society. He chose to work with the peasants, with workers, with Muslims, and therefore Gandhi transformed the whole Indian freedom national movement from intellectual and professionals to the struggle of thousands of peasants, workers, and artisans who participated in it. Similarly, what we require in current times is that we also need support from all sections of society. It is not only the frontline workers that includes doctors, nurses, paramedical staffs who are working day and night to save the millions of lives. Similarly, it is now the sole duty of government and the social workers to ensure the various implementations of policies and interventions. All of us in the society will have to come forward by opting the relevant steps that we can do individually. For example, wearing masks, maintaining physical distancing, helping the needy and the poor people could be a few of them. So, another thing that becomes important here, like Gandhi also discussed about social constructive program in his 40s, where he developed, where he talked of to transform people and
Neha,
reconstruction.
kindly wind up in 1 minute.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
thank you.
So, most importantly, his concept of constructive programs was to it envisaged to bring social, economic, and political change in society. It was based on unity, knowledge of health, hygiene, women, labor, and economic and eradication of economic inequality. So, similar kind of program is also needed in pandemic time, as vulnerable groups like migrants, marginalized are also facing the existential crisis. So at the end, I would like to say that we require we need to build a more resilient and adjusted world, and also rectifying the long-standing inequalities. And here, each one of us has to participate. However, the government has a more prominent role in it, as it can move the needle during the crisis by implementing strategies and initiatives that can benefit the vulnerable groups and small businesses and economy at large. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Neha. So she spoke about a social sustainability or Sarvodaya model to confront the pandemic. So it is reminding us of the right-based model to the responsibility-based model, where citizens' participation is very important for the success of the model. So thank you, Neha. So, Professor Sulim, the technical team is trying to, solve the problem. So, meanwhile, we take the next presentation and then we'll come back to you.
Okay.
So, the next presentation is from the Obdena Yu Muo from the Post-Nationalism and Recollecting the Nigerian Civil War Memories through the Hero Beard Brand's Marketing in Igboland. So it is a study of South East Nigeria. So do we have the author here? Mr. Muo, are you there for the presentation? Mr. Muo and Mr. Okunko, any of you are here for presentation? So Seema, I think we can move on to the next presentation. We can move on to the next presentation by Mr. Thakur Das Jena. It is on the tragedy and ecophobia, a study of William Shakespeare's Macbeth and J.M. Singer's Riders to the Sea.
Hello.
Thakur Das, yeah.
Yes. Can you hear me, ma'am?
Please, we can hear you. Please start. I hope you need not share anything, na? Do you need to share your screen?
No.
Okay, then please carry on.
No, I don't have the screen.
Yeah, please.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. So,
sorry to interrupt.
So I'll talk on.
Thakur, just a minute, please. Yeah. Please.
Yeah, the screen sharing option has been enabled. So if anybody wants to present the screen, it can be done now.
Sure, he doesn't need to. So, okay, we can carry on with his presentation. And meanwhile, we just have to check that Mr. Muo is present or not. Yeah.
Sorry for the disturbances. Sorry, ma'am.
Yeah.
And the share screen is enabled now. They can share the screen.
Sure. Thank you so much. Yes, Mr. Thakur, please carry on.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. So the title of my paper is Tragedy and Ecophobia, and I'll deal with this in reference to Shakespeare's Macbeth and James's Riders to the Sea. In contrast with a soft inland murmur of nature, the violent thunder and lightning cause tragedy in human life. The root forms of nature like flood, acid rain, volcanic eruption, and other biotic communities create a sense of negativity among human beings towards nature, resulting in the emergence of ecophobia as conceptualized by Simon C. Stock by extending the foundational work of material eco-criticism by Serenella Lovino and Sarpil Opperman. Human beings' fear and hatred towards nature have loosened their biophilia, the innate tendency to focus on life and lifelike processes, as defined by Edward Wilson. Biophilia persists human beings to affiliate with the other forms of life, whereas ecophobia forces them to confront our collective and environmental error. According to Stock, I quote, the ecophobic condition exists on a spectrum and can embody fear, contempt, indifference, or lack of mindfulness towards the natural environment, which its genetic origins have functioned in part to preserve our species. The ecophobic condition has also growth economies and ideological interest. David Sobel, in his book Beyond Ecophobia, Reclaiming the Heart in Nature Education, defines ecophobia as a fear of ecological problems and the natural world, fear of oil spills, rainforest destruction, whale hunting, acid rain, the ozone hole, and Lyme diseases. This environmental tragedy, or tragedy as a literary genre forecasting the violent forms of nature, creates ecophobia among the general audience. The inherent connection between tragedy and ecophobia, as invoked by Terry Eagleton with her humorous question on how a tragedy differs from a congress of global warming, is found also in two very popular tragedies, Macbeth by William Shakespeare and Riders to the Sea by James Synge. The beginning of Macbeth with thunder and lightning and the appearance of the witches, who were thought capable of raging storms, and had claimed to do so in News from Scotland, and that of the Writers to the Sea, with the discussion over the seas hovering up Michael's body between Kathleen and Nora, arise fears towards nature. The witches in Macbeth, who look not like the inhabitants of the earth, symbolizes disorder in nature and exemplified through not only thunder and lightning, but also fog and filthy air. Stock observes that these wild, unearthly beings are associated with the undecidable meteorological conditions of so foul and fair a day, quote unquote, the likes of which Macbeth has never seen. Macbeth's witches challenge the boundaries of the human through their associations with nature. In Riders to the Sea, Kathleen and Nora's discussion of Michael's dead body found in Donegal and Great Roaring in the West gives an impression of the ruthless sea refusing simple idealization of a rural island. To quote Stock, theorizing ecophobia means recognizing the importance of control. But it is truly ironic that the more control we seem to have over the natural environment, the less we actually have. This unpredictability of the natural world has been experienced by the Elizabethan world with a shortage of food, a period of cold weather known as the Little Ice Age, and a profound natural storm that has been an essence in Shakespearean tragedy. In Macbeth, this unpredictability is found in the sudden appearance of the witches in front of Macbeth and Banquo. Their language these women, like beings, are associated with nature and therefore portrayed as wild and unpredictable as weather, as found in the line, the earth has bubbles as the water has, and these are of them. And these human fears of hostile cosmos can be transformed into male fears about women, as found in Shakespeare's Macbeth's fears of the instruments of darkness that would entice him into damnation. If good, why do I yield to their suggestion, whose horrid image doth unfix my hair and make my seated heart knock at my ribs against the use of nature? The unpredictability of the sea that Moria affirms again in Riders to the Sea, with the line, it's little like the like of him knows of the sea, and of Moria herself, as found in her forgetting of giving a blessing to Bartley instead of sending him out with an unlucky word behind him. Kathleen and Nora finds a deep unpredictability in the words of the mother to her son as follows. He's gone now, God spare us, and we'll not see him again. He's gone now. When the black night is falling, I'll have no son left in the world. So Moria is quite aware of the unpredictability and ruthlessness of the sea that eventually gallops her last son. This echoes the condition of seafaring people and seaside indigenous dwellers as narrated by Kate Johnson in his book, Earth, Water, Fire, and Air. I quote, to seafaring people worldwide, with their generations of the drowned, the ocean can be a great fire's cauldron where eater and eaten are boiled down together, an untamed and untamable presence. Stock argues that ecophobia is related to displacement and voice, displacement and regression with unconscious anxiety and avoidance from one of the three stages of phobia formation following the Freudian hypothesis as found in his essay, The Unconscious. Again in 1926, Freud's theory focused on whether phobia is an inhibition or symptom consisting of displacement and regression. Freud thought that the human being's unconscious wishes and thoughts create unconscious conflict among ego and superego. The unconscious conflict threatens the ego with the anxiety that it will overpower ego, which may be unable to function as the entire ego's energy is used to deal with the anxiety. In this
Mr. Thakur,
situation,
can you
the
please
ego
conclude
uses.
in 1 minute? Can you please conclude in
Okay,
1
okay,
minute?
ma'am.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, ma'am. Okay, ma'am. So as we have found that ecophobia is related with also cannibalism, that is also found in Macbeth, and also ecophobia is the hallmark of human progress, whereas eco-criticism is defined by ecological humility. So this has also been, I mean, this theme also found in Macbeth as well as in Ladsaria. So to conclude, like these popular tragedies, many forms of eco-media have been articulating ecophobia for a long time. Stock argues that it probably has roots that reach back to the evolution of opposable thumb, which enabled hominids to make tools and to conscript wheat, barley, peas, lentils, donkeys, sheep, pigs, goats about 9,000 years ago. This fear towards nature, portrayed in a tragedy or created by the tragedy of human beings caused by a natural disaster, has compelled the human world to control anything natural and non-human and to forget the romantic biophilia. Thank you very much
Thank
for
you,
giving me this
Mr. Thakur.
opportunity.
So it's like your reflection on ecophobia in the context of Shakespearean's Macbeth and the Shing's riders to the sea. It reminds us of that perennial debate on the nature nurture, where we see that all our civilizational efforts are there to control the nature, but in the process, we ourselves, we harm the nature, we exploit the nature, and we invite
Yes.
doomsday for us. So thank you so much. Now,
Yes, very,
can
very
we
true.
can I invite Professor Sulim for his presentation? Now the screen share is enabled, Professor. You can start.
Yes, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
So I will start sharing.
Yes.
Just 1 second. Okay, so is screen visible for everyone? Okay, am I audible and screen is visible? Can I start?
Yes, you are visible.
Yes, you are very much.
Okay,
Please.
okay, thank you. So that's the paper I'm going to present, Catharsis through Realism, Interrogating Stanislavsky System as a relevant mode in contemporary post-truth theater practice. Before I start, I'd like to tell you how did I come up with this paper. A person who helped me a lot, it's Professor Shobana Matthews, my jurist colleague from Christ University, because we had long conversations on realism in theater, and one play that I was working this year, last spring as a director, The Seagull by Anton Chekhov, and she suggested me to write a paper on it. So thank you, Professor Shobana. I know that you're watching me now. So the paper itself, it's not just theoretical knowledge, but also my practices as a faculty and theater director. In approach towards teaching or even writing the paper, I always use a quote of Anton Chekhov, that knowledge is of no value unless you put into practice. And when I started to write the paper, I thought, what's the purpose? What's the objective? It cannot be something like compiling information that people could get from the books or the internet. It has to serve a purpose. And the main purpose, and I would say my main target audience, is the people who practice realism as a classic form of theater and have sort of doubts that it might be outdated and they can move to something more avant-garde because it's trendy. It's for these people and other people who don't practice theater, but would like to know more about realism and why is it relevant. The play I mentioned before, The Seagull by Anton Chekhov, that's the photo that I staged this year. The play itself, it is basically a wonderful representation of realism in theater, because as some of you might know, Anton Chekhov started social realism, or maybe Henrik Ibsen. Well, there are still debates, but I think it's Chekhov. And the seagull itself, the play itself, is quite interesting because Chekhov wrote as a comedy, but everyone was saying it's a tragedy. There's nothing fun in it. If you analyze it with as a typical comedy, if you know what I mean. And it's true. Like there is nothing funny. Like people are unhappy there, they're suffering. But in the suffering and the tragedy, we can see irony. Because if you think about that, in the play, in the seagull, every single person loves their own person. Isn't that funny in terms of irony? Isn't that something relatable to us, where people love their own people and those people love someone else, etc.? And Chekhov basically revolutionized the entire playwriting because his characters, not some kings, princesses, and noble people that common folks like us don't meet on a daily basis. They're regular people like we are with very small problems compared to the previous place of previous centuries where there was grand events. Regular people could be countryside, small problems like we are. And that changed everything. So people could recognize themselves in the characters. People could feel what the characters were feeling. People had thought, the audience had thought, that's actually what happened with me a couple of days ago. And the phenomenon that the plays, they were without huge events or great romantic stories or some heroes. None of it was there. If you read the play, you might even find it boring. But they somehow could touch people, their hearts, and make audience cry and laugh without zero events happening there. Events comparing to the past. I mean, how the playwriting was before. And another, like one of the reasons why people could feel it, it's catharsis. It's something that was Aristotle was talking about 1,000 years ago, and still that what all the actors and directors, if you ask about the ultimate goal, what they want to do, they want to bring catharsis to the audience, because we want to see how they cry, how they laugh. And that's difficult to achieve. It's not easy because catharsis is evolving. What made people cry 100 years ago won't make them cry now. It even can make them laugh. So how catharsis evolved? Well, it's evolved, as I said, with the people. And realism itself brought this new form of catharsis, where audience first time wasn't watching the performance, but they could see a real life happening on the stage. Like they were peeking through the door hole. That's something so intimate, something so real. And they had this magic moment, forgetting that they watch a show that was live. And that catharsis, that new form of catharsis, could brought only by achieving the scenic truth by the actors. Because playwright gave everything, like Chekhov gave everything. He created unhappy characters. If you talk about reasons of catharsis, we do through pity and fear, there is so much pity in Chekhov plays. We pity for every single person because they're so unhappy. And we fear for them, we fear for their lives, for their future, for everything. But what actors are supposed to do with this great material? Bring it to the stage and also make it real. And the person who contributed, not just a lot, contributed everything to achieve scenic truth was Konstantin Stanislavsky and his system on acting. The person who completely reinvented acting. And what acting that we know nowadays, that we see in all European movies, Hollywood movies, that's him. Because the system, it was complex. It was basically the first guide for an actor. He made it as a science, that if you followed the books, you could be non-talented, But if you understand it, like what is objective, super objective, given circumstances, through line, and so much more. But if you can do it, if you learn it, if you practice it, you could be an actor. So every single person in this world with enough desire.
Sorry for interruption, Professor Suleiman. We just have to, you have 1 minute to conclude.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. Let me speed up. So the main ideas was that he introduced art of experiencing versus art of representation. Art of experiencing when you don't just represent the role or character like it was in the past, but you experiencing the real emotions. You do it through research and the practices. The main idea was that you can amaze people and not amuse them, because through being amazed, you could get the catharsis, not just being amused, because amused maximum can put a smile on your face. So what we want to do, amaze but not amuse. And why realism will be forever? I'm saying that other practices, if you talk about theater of absurd cruelty, theater of oppression, theater of like feminism, they appear at a certain historical events. It's linked to the history. But when this event is over, the historical period is over, the necessity in that form of theater doesn't need anymore. But realism reflects reality, so it cannot become obsolete. It always be there. The people who took realism on the new level, it was like Hollywood, because they practiced this system of Stanislavsky and adapted into the method acting. And yeah, James Dean, Marlon Brando, Golden Age of Hollywood. And they keep rushing through everything. So realism could be, one second. Realism can exist in acting without realism in writing, but realism in writing cannot exist without realism in acting. So what I'm saying that you can take any piece of literature and still make it look real with the realistic approach towards acting. And why realism is needed now, now, because we live in post-truth society, where our mind affected by media in worst possible ways, where we see the twisted reality, where we don't believe facts, but we believe opinions. And the art was this kind of form out of politics, out of manipulation, out of any kind of PR. It was pure. Not anymore. Not anymore. Now it's different. You know, it's also, I would say, even art from realism, unfortunately, moves towards post-truth. And we can see it if you look at the movies, what I say now. Complete PR with zero truth.
So kindly wrap up, please,
and yes, what I want to say, that hopefully someday we're going to get to utopia where art will be without any, it won't be influenced by politics, have any barriers and boundaries. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Your presentation reminds me of some of our folk theaters in India, which does talk about this catharsis and the art of experiencing. These are really played out by the totally subaltern group. So thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So next, we are coming to our last presentation. That is by our friend from Nigeria. That is Mr. Obina Yomo. Please kindly start your presentation. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Sorry.
Do you have to share your screen? Then you can share your screen, please.
All right. Thank you very much. I had technical issues, so I thank God I'm here finally. Yeah, I wrote this paper with Obina Moore, but I'm Dr. Uche Okonkwo. I'm presenting from Nigeria. I'm looking at post-nationalism and Nigerian Civil War memories through the Hero Beer brand marketing in Igbo land. Between 1967 to 1970, there was civil war in Nigeria. The Igbo of southeastern Nigeria made attempts to secede from Nigeria. That attempt lasted for 3 years until eventually they surrendered to the federal government in 1970. Till date, some of the issues that led to the civil war has been ongoing, in terms of revenue allocation, in terms of physical federalism, and all other issues. Right now, I'm a social historian, I'm looking at alcohol advertising and how it has been able to reflect on Civil War memories. So I begin by talking about the first beer in Nigeria. Production in Nigeria was the Star beer, which began in 1949, right? The Star beer came with the idea of modernity because that period was during the period of colonial rule. So the idea of modernity continued up to 1960 when Nigeria got independence from Britain. All right. Now, even with independence in 1960, many beer brands began to emerge, and this beer brand has to do with Guinness beer. It has to do with Golden Gate beers, and as a matter of fact, they continued till sometime in 2006 when the Guinness beer came with Michael Power. Michael Power was an African who showed a lot of energy and connected with the Guinness beer brand. So before you know it, sometime in 1999, it was a period to return from military dictatorship to civilian rule. So to civilian rule, the Igbo people who have been excluded from governance in Nigeria were not captured and they were not able to make the presidential ticket. So there was agitations. People begin to think that going back to the Republic of Biafra, where the Igbo people were from 1967 to 1970, was better. So there was animosity. There was movement for reality of the Biafran Republic. There are many of them indigenous peoples of Biafra. So at the same time, in 2012, there was the death of the Biafran leader, Odumegwu Ojukwu, Colonel Odumegwu Emeka Ojukwu, and it coincided with the arrival of Hero Beer. So the Hero Beer used the Biafran flag as well as the Biafran logo on their beer bottle. And before you know it, the agitation for separatist republic from Nigeria was ongoing. Then the advert on the Hero Beer keep recapturing the people about the memories of the Nigerian Civil War, about the memories of the defunct Republic of Biafra. All right. So that being the case, this study is able to look at the failure of modernity because hitherto the beer branch we had was emphasizing on modernity, but the Hero Beer brand came down to the idea of culture. So it is a direct attack to the imperialist nature of the hitherto beer advertisement that was going on before 2012. So the arrival of Hero Beer created competitions, a kind of recollecting the war memories, created job. There were new distributors. There were new outlets, where people could market Hero Beer. So people sit down to sip Hero Beer as well as reminiscence the Civil War memories. So this is a kind of marketing strategy that really worked. While people drink beer also, it now provides a platform for them to reflect on the idea of Biafra. So they came up with so many slogans to say, oh, hero, oh, the hero of the beer of the Civil War, oh, what the Igbo slangs to remember the dead heroes of the Civil War. So they use it a kind of to reenact memories of that Civil War, and by so doing, they were able to compete favorably with other beer brands. So in conclusion, I don't want to bore us unnecessarily because I've had a lot of people discuss. I am trying to say that from 2012, the arrival of Hero Beer to Nigerian drinking space, a kind of rekindled ethnic identity and based on tradition, and the modernity narratives change. Existing beer boss, now carry the issue of identity, reflecting Civil War memories, Then the option left for the federal government of Nigeria is to address those issues that led to the Civil War by calling a sovereign national conference of the various ethnic groups in Nigeria as a way of forging true federalism, which is lacking in the Nigerian polity. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ushe. So now I'm handing over the session to my co-chair, Dr. Seema. Now she will take the question answers. So please raise your hand for the questions and please mention the speaker to whom you are asking the questions.
Okay, can we have any question? We can also ask question from each other if we have any questions.
Correct. We have any questions?
No, we don't have any question in Q&A. I think all
So I
those.
have one question for S. Geetha and Smrutisikta Mishra, that they were talking about the queer identities and conflicts in the family relationship through some selected movies. So my question is like what we see here, mostly the sexuality preferences and the conflict within the family. So when the sexuality itself is a question, when it is a transsexual person arrive in the family, what kind of conflict they have experienced? I just want them their reflection as a researcher.
Yes, madam, are you here?
Yes, Geetha and Smrutisikta Mishra, are they there?
I think they are not here. S. Geetha? No, I think she's not here. There's somebody called Edmund is here, but I'm not sure who's this person.
No, I don't think so. They will be.
No, she's not here, I guess.
So then my next question is to Professor Sulim. So I would like to ask him that, have you experienced any of those Indian folk theater where this catharsis happened, when where the participant themselves experiences a matter of empowerment through participating in the process of theater? This happened with the, I mean, really, really oppressed groups, very, very subaltern groups through the folk theater medium. So have you experienced or any such catharsis process in Indian theater experience?
Yeah. So unfortunately, not yet, but I'm looking forward because what I teach is like European and North American approach towards theater. But as an audience, I've seen some plays, Indian plays, but not too many. And very often I was very much amused. It was interesting, but the feeling of catharsis, if be very honest, not yet. But I hope I will experience it. I just need to watch more, I think.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So since we do not have any more questions, shall we close the panel, ma'am? With your permission?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, so we thank all the paper presenters, organizers, and of course our Sudeshna Mukherjee madam for being here. And it was indeed a very nice discussion. We had touched almost all genres of literature. Yes.
Hello, this is Geetha.
Okay.
Yeah. I was here, madam. I was here. Due some technical glitches here. I think ma'am asked me a question.
Yes.
Sudeshna Mukherjee, ma'am.
Yes,
you had a question to ask. I was here.
Yeah, please
madam, can you just repeat the question, madam? What?
You talked about the sexuality, that sexual preferences, mostly that homosexuality and homosexual relationship as a conflict in the family. But when I say that madam, when the gender identity itself poses threat, when it is not a cisgender, it's a transgender identity, when your gender and sex doesn't conform. So what kind of challenges it throws before the family? Most of the time, traditionally, we see it as a disowning the child. But now situations are changing. So what, as a researcher, what is your reflection on the issue?
What kind of challenges do families face, or do people have?
Exactly. How families are now open to accept such kind of children who are not conforming to their sexual and gender identities?
Maybe a decade or 2 decades before, things, as you told, were very traditional, and societies were bound by norms, dictates that, as you told, people who had alternate sexualities were being frowned upon, and they were thrown out, or they had to face ostracization. But things are changing in the sense, maybe due to the socio-economic changes, and maybe because of more of awareness and opening up of maybe sectors, where today I do feel that things, maybe these people are slowly, even though they are not being completely having a say, they are slowly gaining acceptance in the sense that families are at least willing to not completely disown them completely. At least they are taking in them, but still society is like, as I told you, it is almost like a monosexual, wherein it's only one, where it's like between only gender binary, either it's male or female. Still society is bound by it, but still challenges are there. But still people are, because of the outlook and because of the changes and cosmopolitanism, and because of the so many other social changes and liberalization, maybe people are slowly taking up, but I would not say that completely things have gone for a change. But still violence.
Thank you, Geetha. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Any more questions, ma'am?
No, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you to the moderators and chairpersons for giving me an opportunity to present my views.
Please, Seema.
Okay, so now we close the session. Thank you, everybody. And interestingly, we had covered a variety of topics and variety of genres, right from theaters to novel. And I liked that paper which Geetha presented also. So with this, I would like to thank, first of all, the organizers for putting in such a hard effort to bring us together at one platform. I also thank our session chair, Dr. Sudeshna Mukherjee, for being so kind to us and for bringing in such important insight so that we can really think and do some homework. And I also thank all the presenters here. So with this, I request, and with session chair's permission, we would like to close the panel.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you,
everyone.
thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you very much.